Hello and welcome to today's webinar, which is Substantiating Wellness Claims for Cosmetic Products. Quickly to let you know, this webinar is being recorded, so I'll be sending the link to everyone who is registered to the event straight afterwards. And there's also going to be the opportunity for question and answers towards the end of the presentation. Again, you can sort of make notes of questions as we go along to be able to ask at that time, or if there's any questions you might have after the event, you can also email them to me when I send out the link to the webinar recording, so that will all be available. So thank you very much for joining today. So today we're going to be focusing particularly on wellness claims. So there's been a real homogeny between wellness and beauty for quite a long time now. And there's been this kind of understanding that, being well, having kind of interest in your health and your wellness really helps with beauty. So sort of being looking and feeling good from the inside and out. But also beauty products has very much been developed with wellness in mind. So we're going to look at some claims that you can make about your cosmetic products in particular that were to do with wellness, and how you can substantiate those claims and the kind of claim wordings you're able to make. So to start off, let's go through the agenda. So we're going to have a look at what the summary of the wellness cosmetics market is. So there's a big industry there, and we'll just take a little look at the overview. I'm going to talk about some global cosmetic regulations that are applicable to wellness claims. The regulations for advertising, I think that's a really important place to start when looking at any claim testing. Summary of consumer research, because we're going to be looking particularly at substantiating our claims with consumer research, and how we are able to make successful marketing claims with that consumer research. We're going to look at some study designs and methodology, and I'll share a case study with you which will show how you can design your study and use the correct methodology so you can substantiate those claims. And I'll also look at some non-compliant claims that are generally for cosmetics, and also how they affect the wellness market as well. So a little bit of information about me. I'm the regulatory specialist at Ayton Global Research. So we're a consumer research company, and we base all of our data on perception claims. So obviously that'll be the focus of today. My job as regulatory means that I'm on top of all regulatory kind of impacts that can have, well, anything to do with regulatory that has an impact on claims, so claim substantiation, but also in the cosmetics market as well, and what kind of testing you need to get your product on the market. So what I tend to do is look at a client's portfolio of products that they want to test, and then find out what kind of testing is needed, and how we can substantiate the claims that they need. So I've been working at the company for about 8 years now. So I've got a huge kind of experience in managing studies, designing studies, and then how the regulatory all the legislation has impacted how we need to conduct business to make sure that our clients are able to use their data to substantiate their claims. So firstly, I want to talk about the wellness market. Sorry, take a sip. So the global wellness market is huge. As you can see, it's $4.5 trillion was the market in 2018, and that's globally. The industry has grown really, really quickly. So you can see there's been a growth between 2015 and 2017, which is kind of really sped up. So as I said, it's one of those things over the last few years, people have really started taking an interest in wellness and how that relates to beauty and cosmetics. It's really works together really well. And I'm definitely seeing from our side, so many more products tested that have wellness in mind, either in the development of the product or indeed with the claims that they're looking to make. So personal care, beauty and anti-aging, very much at the top of that kind of growth and at the top of that market. Also from Something Digital, sorry. So they're saying, again, it's a really big business for beauty and wellness. So not just the wellness industry, but specifically for beauty. Cosmetic sales in 2019 in the US was over 93.5 billion. So again, that's just in the US. So it's kind of an example for you. If it's something you're looking at kind of growing into, or it's something you're already doing, it's an excellent market to get into. And I really do believe, from my opinion as well, that it's something that will continue to grow, particularly in the time that we're in now. And if I just go to the next slide, COVID-19. I like to talk about this in my webinars because I think we can't ignore the kind of crisis that's going on at the moment and how that's impacting all of the FMCG markets, and indeed wellness as well. And well-being has been a sort of really important thing to do with COVID-19, not just to do with health, because obviously you know, it's really important to stay healthy. We've had a lot of information about keeping our immune systems up, getting lots of vitamin D, eating kind of red and orange vegetables. I know that I've certainly taken an interest into it, and how your nutrition can really boost your immunity and indeed protect you as much as you can against getting ill. But also it's really important to notice that be kind of looking after your mental health and well-being, and looking after yourself and kind of connecting with yourself as well. That's been really important, because again, wellness is to do with your body, but also very much to do with your mind. There's been a lot of kind of research and information put out there about kind of anxiety and depression, especially to do with COVID-19 and kind of being locked in, and the anxiety of just having this kind of global pandemic happening. It's been really important to connect with yourself and make, you know, check in, look after yourself, basically. And that's what wellness is. Obviously, it's not necessarily wellness with cosmetics, but that's generally what wellness is when we talk about wellness. So the beauty industry has been advocating for total well-being and positive emotional marketing in recent years. So again, it's using your marketing to be positive, and sort of all those kinds of words that I'm saying about checking in with yourself, looking after yourself, kind of taking that time to pamper yourself, everything like that. That's been a huge message for the beauty industry, and indeed how products have been developed. It says they're kind of encouraging consumers to look and feel their best. So now's more of a time than ever. And you might have noticed it yourself. I definitely have, where beauty brands and cosmetic brands have been putting out that message, you know, take the time to check in with yourself, have a pamper, have a face mask, have a manicure at home, that kind of thing. And it's a really good message to get out there. So again, not only is the wellness industry really big and really good thing to get into, but now more of a time than ever is it a really good thing to be kind of aiming your product development towards. So another kind of bit of information there from Professional Beauty. They said that in the UK alone, the sales of personal care products increased by 53%. That was over the past week in April, but we can see that, you know, again, as people were at home, they kind of thought, right, well, I really want to look after myself. Now's the time to really check in. I've got this time for myself. I can't go out. I really want to look after myself a bit more. Self-care and home-based beauty treatments, so things like manicures to improve well-being and things like that. So I know bath bombs, they were huge. They grew, like I said, face masks, hair masks, all those kinds of little luxurious things that when we're really busy and we're working and we've got a big social life, we don't really take that time to go, let's have a nice bath and a face mask. And we're all doing it. I know me and my friends were all kind of messaging each other about the face masks we're trying out and things like that. And that's all part of well-being. And it's to do with marketing. So it's not just about the products themselves, but if you market your products towards that, you know, taking that time for yourself, that's kind of well-being claims that you can have with beauty as well. But I'll go through lots of examples of those. But most importantly, when we're talking about claims, the most important thing to be aware of is ad self-regulation. So it's great to think about the kind of claims that we can make and how we can use kind of current situations and things like that to really market our products. But before we even think about what claims we want to make, we need to be aware of who's regulating these adverts, because that will have an impact on what claims you can make. So ad self-regulation is basically the way that the industry regulates adverts globally. So I'll go through kind of laws and things like that, but generally each country, or most countries, have an advertising self-regulatory organization that regulates adverts in its own country. So the idea is to make sure that advertisements are legal, decent, honest, and truthful. So you can't kind of just say anything about the product. You can't say that this is the most pampering product in the world, that people really feel relaxed when they use it, unless you've got some kind of evidence to substantiate it, unless the product's been kind of manufactured in that way as well. So that's what these regulatory bodies are doing. They're checking the adverts that are put out there and making sure that everything is, basically legal, decent, honest, and truthful. So there's three parts of the industry. So if you're from any of these parts of the industry, it's what you need to be aware of. So the advertisers who pay for the advertising agency is responsible for its form and content, and the media that carry it. So essentially, if you're anything to do with the product development, if you're anything to do with any of those kind of three parts of the industry, you really need to be aware of the advertising code of conduct in the country that you are selling the product, because it will be your responsibility if anything is seen to be, you know, against the code of conduct in those countries. So the way they work is they're a platform for complaints, essentially. So it's not that they're kind of going through picking your products up off the shelf and kind of calling you up and saying, have you got a claim substantiation for this product? It would be impossible. The industry is too large. So the idea is that you follow your regulation. In the EU particularly, we have a responsible person for our products, and they check the claims before the product goes on the market and make sure we've got substantiation. So it's really well regulated, particularly in the EU. But in other countries as well, where maybe they don't have sort of a responsible person, the idea is the kind of trust is there to have all of that substantiation in place. But if someone complains about your product, and be that a competitor or be it a consumer, they'll advertise to those advertising self-regulatory organisations, and they will investigate it on their behalf. So if you don't have that evidence available, so if you've kind of risked it, your adverts can be removed. So I listened to a really interesting panel discussion a couple of weeks ago, and there was someone who is a UK-based brand, and they said, you know, we kind of make our claims and we look at the code of conduct, and if it doesn't apply with the code of conduct of the advertising organisation, for example, in the UK, the Advertising Standards Authority, well, it's our risk and we can put it out there, but they won't do anything about it. This isn't true. The ASA, and indeed any regulatory organisation, can ask you to withdraw your ads. Well, they can ask you to withdraw your ads and your products from the market if you've got any of the claims on the products on the shelves. And trading standards would be involved as well if you weren't to do it. So it's not advisory, it is a legal requirement. You must comply with the advertising code of conduct, and your adverts will be withdrawn. They'll also be publicly stated as well. So it's another thing to think about, is you don't want to have your brand kind of publicly slated. Essentially, the advertising standards organizations, I think of them, they can either be your worst enemy or your best friend. If you go with their code of conduct, they're your best friend, because they're protecting you against your competitors. All of that code of conduct is in place because it wouldn't be fair if everyone was just able to say everything they can about their product. The marketplace would be completely unfair for the people that had invested that money into getting their claims substantiated and getting that evidence. To people that just kind of said it about their product. So it really is protecting the industry in that way. They can be your worst enemy if you kind of take that risk and don't look at that code of conduct and just kind of put your ads out there anyway. So I would always recommend to start off, before you even think about your claims, always look at the code of conduct first in the country that you're looking to advertise, then make your claims, then refer back. I take it as a circle. Keep referring back as you're making your claims for your products. There's also other organisations to be aware of, things like the Cosmetics Directive, but generally the advertising standards are the people that are going to regulate your adverts. So there's a couple of little links I've put at the bottom of the page here of places to start looking. So if you're not sure, if you've got an idea of where you want to start advertising your product, if you're a global brand or indeed just local, you can have a little look on these websites. So the first one I've put up there is the International Chamber of Commerce. So they've got a regulatory framework that countries adopt, but they've got a list of the countries that have adopted their framework. So there are 42 countries that have adopted their framework, and another sort of 10 countries that have adopted but adapted the framework. So it's a really good place to start looking if you're like, okay, I know I want to advertise in the USA, China, UK, Australia. You can have a look on the ICC and check those countries have adopted that framework, because if they have adopted the framework, the chances are they're going to have a really similar code of conduct. And also it gives you an idea if they're not on there, if they haven't adopted the framework, you need to investigate that country separately and have a look at what laws are in their country, or if they have any other SRO or self-regulatory organisation which has not adopted the framework but still has its own code of conduct. I've also put up ICAS, which is the International Council of Advertising Self-Regulation. Now, they were set up by the European Advertising Standards Alliance. So if you sell in the EU, you'll know you've got different countries that have their own advertising authorities, but you've also got the European Advertising Standards Alliance. It all very much has the same kind of code of conduct, because if people are part of the EASA, they'll have adopted the same code of conduct. But it's a really good place to look for like overriding. So if you want to sell in Europe, generally look at the EASA. But they set up the International Council of Advertising Self-Regulation because it has invited other countries to look at that code of conduct as well and also join in. So there's over 25 countries now that are part of ICAS. So if you're thinking you know what countries you want to advertise in, you can go on the ICAS website, check that country as a member, and it also has a list of who that self-regulatory organisation is and a link to their website. So it really makes that search a lot easier. They also put up news on their website as well. So indeed, with things like COVID-19, they had a statement about advertising with COVID-19 that all of those countries have then adopted. They've all adopted that kind of that statement, you know, and they're working in that way. So it's just a really good hub for information as well when it comes to advertising standards. So I know there's a lot of information about that, but when we're talking about global ad self-regulation, I just want to give you all of the information to start looking. I can't say how to kind of rate, you know, what the code of conduct is, because it's so broad in terms of, you know, what you do need to know where you're looking. Each country is different. But generally, a lot of the countries, like I said, because ICAS was set up, they're all looking at the same code of conduct. And the main thing is you need to think about these keywords: legal, decent, honest, and truthful. So long as your adverts are complying with those 4 keywords, it doesn't really matter where you're selling it, because they will have all had that same code of conduct. The codes and everything like that they have is more specific. So for example, we'll be talking about things like wellness claims. So you have a look for that kind of thing in particular. And I will talk about that as we go on as well. I've got some examples for you there. So just to kind of put it into context, I know I've mentioned a kind of few examples, but I just want to bring up a few examples so you can see what I'm on about in context to countries. So the UK, India, Australia, and Brazil, all of those self-regulatory organisations that I mentioned on this page here, they're all part of ICAS. So as I mentioned, they're all going to be looking at the same code of conduct. Might be slight differences in there, but generally they're going to have really similar code of conduct. And as I said, if there's any news that's released on ICAS, you know these countries will have adopted whatever is in that news. The USA, I always like to bring up separately. It's not the only country like this, but it's a really good example of it. The FTC is not a self-regulatory organisation, it's a federal organisation. So they have got a self-regulatory organisation in the USA, which is called, which is the Better Business Bureau National Programs. But the actual complaints basis comes from the FTC. So the Better Business National Programme is in place to put a code of conduct up there and trust that, that companies are going to follow that code of conduct for their advertising. But it's actually the FTC that handles the complaints from the competitors and from the consumers, and that investigates them. So again, really important to be aware of, because in this case it's federal. So you really, really want to make sure you're kind of having your adverts that are following the code of conduct of the Better Business Bureau National Programme. Sorry, it's such a mouthful. Because obviously if you're following that code of conduct, you won't have to get kind of involved on that federal level. There's also advertising laws. So every country has advertising laws, despite whether they've got an SRO or not. Every country has advertising laws, because you need to protect your consumers, not just from misleading advertising, but offensive advertising and that kind of thing. So if you see a country and you think, okay, it hasn't got an SRO, I'm just going to put my adverts out there, please don't do that. Please look and see what the laws are. And even if you do see what the SRO is and follow their code of conduct, be aware of the laws as well, because you don't want to have illegal adverts. That's a whole different thing to non-compliant. So I brought up a few kind of laws here just to give you some examples. So in the UAE, you've got the National Media Council. So they've got their own SRO, which is the Advertising Business Group, and the National Media Council are the federal organisation. So they basically enforce the penalties. So you can, the consumers can complain to the Advertising Business Group, and the National Media Council will enforce the penalties, but they'll also investigate adverts as well. So a bit differently, they're not just a complaints basis, they can be, they'll be policing adverts out in the UAE. And there's several laws that they, advertising laws that they are kind of looking out for, and I've brought up an example there. So if you're advertising in the UAE, take a look at the ABG, but also take a look at the NMC as well, because they've got loads of information on the website. They're not trying to catch you out. They are giving you all of the information you need. They've got guides about advertising and claims and what evidence you need and how long you've got to. You can display your evidence if your claim gets sort of brought up as an investigation. So don't kind of be like, oh God, they're trying to catch me out. They're not. They're trying to give you all the information that you need, so that if you don't have to go to that point of having your advert put under investigation. In the USA, you've also got the FDA, so they're creating laws to protect consumers. They work with the FTC, so you'll often see, if you're looking on their website, there'll be the FTC and the FDA have worked together to give a letter of warning, for example, to a brand for misleading adverts. So that's actually a really good source as well. If you look on the FTC and FDA's websites, they put up all of their warning letters that they've sent to companies that have kind of gone against advertising code of conduct and things like that. So, and that's the case with any SRO, by the way. If you're ever unsure, if you're like, is this a really risky claim? Has someone made this before? Has there been a complaint about this before? On all of their websites, they release all of the cases, or all of the warning letters. So it's something that I was looking at. If I'm thinking, this is a really risky claim that my client is asking for, I'll probably look on there first and see if there's been any complaints, and then if there hasn't been, I'll kind of ask the authorities themselves and see if that kind of claim can be made. I also put up for China, I've got the advertising law of the People's Republic of China. So they restated it in 2015, to strengthen consumer protection and impose tougher rules on advertisers. So if you're looking at advertising in China, please look at the advertising law of the People's Republic of China and double check what the kind of penalties are and things like that. And again, just what advice they've got. Generally, like I said, don't see it as something scary. All of what's important is knowing who the organizations are, and what the laws are, because they are putting out advice for you. They're not trying to catch you out. And indeed, that's what we're looking at as well, Ayton Global Research. So as I mentioned, my kind of clients will give me a list of claims they want to make, and I'll kind of see if we can substantiate them and how. And that's a big part of my job, is to look at these regulations and look at these laws and make sure we can make those claims as well. Just a note about advertising in COVID-19. So the ICAST, EASA, FDA, FTC and CONARED have all put up a kind of warning about advertising during COVID-19. The main point I want to bring up here is you shouldn't use COVID-19 to exploit people's fear and try and sell your products. So when I was talking about those warning letters, there were lots of warning letters in the USA of people selling things like face masks and hand sanitizer and saying this will cure COVID-19, or this is the only thing that will protect you from COVID-19. And it's not true. We know there's no cure for COVID-19 as of yet. Hopefully there will be soon. But as of yet, there isn't anything out there. So we need to make sure that we're not kind of making adverts that exploit that fear, or that, again, this same code of conduct exists. Despite the fact that we're in a pandemic, your adverts must still be legal and decent and honest and truthful. That doesn't go out the window. The advertising standards are still monitoring your adverts. They're still getting complaints. So please be aware of it during this pandemic as well. So coming back to wellness and cosmetics. So obviously I've said that this is substantiated claims for cosmetic products, but it's really important that we talk about product categories and making sure that your product is the correct category, because obviously that affects the claims that you're allowed to make about the product. So the main kind of distinct here, I've put up definitions for medicines and cosmetics. Now this is the EU definitions, so it may vary slightly for different countries, but it's a really good guideline still, because they're all kind of following the same sort of thing. But please be aware that obviously in the USA, certain things are OTCs, where there might be cosmetics in the EU. And again, in Australia, there's certain things that are therapeutic goods. So please do look, but I think for today's webinar, this is a really good distinction of what a medicine is and what a cosmetic is. So essentially for a medicine, it's anything that can treat, prevent or diagnose or kind of cure a disease or, you know, a problem. So, you know, things like, there's always been that distinction between acne. That's something that's come up in the last few years. People saying that this product helps for acne. Because acne is a medical condition, it can't be a cosmetic product as a medicine. Or a borderline as well. So there's that as well. There's a borderline that gets mixed in there. But for today, I'm going to keep it really simple. So you don't want to say that it can cure a skin problem. What you can say for a cosmetic is it improves the appearance of spots and blemishes or skin imperfections. So there's certain ways you need to make sure you're wording your claims. So again, make sure you look at the kind of definitions of what your product is before you word your claims. word your claims, and then go back to it. Make sure you're still on the right product category. Because I've got an example to talk about later on of where, you know, adverts have been withdrawn because they just got the wrong category of product. If it'd been registered as a medicine straight away, their advert would have been fine. So for medicines, we're looking at a cure. For cosmetics, we're basically looking at anything that's kind of on the human body, external parts, apart from obviously teeth and mucous membranes, because toothpaste is also a cosmetic. And it's basically to do with cleaning, perfuming, changing the appearance, correcting body odors, protecting them or keeping them in good condition. So it's very much, you know, for things like wellness and things like that, it's going to be about improving the appearance, improving the feel, improving skin, things like skin texture. And that's what we were looking at cosmetics. So be really careful. And like I said, it's particularly wellness is why I say it, because wellness can often go into the territory of medicine with claims if you're not careful. So it's really making sure you've got the distinction there. I also want to talk a little bit about food, because I didn't put it in my presentation, but a lot of the products that we test that are wellness products are things like supplements. So it's technically a food because you're eating it, but you've got beauty claims on them. So basically with food, you can make health and you can make beauty claims, but there's a different distinction there. Health claims have got a different stricter code of conduct, whereas beauty claims are a bit easier to kind of substantiate and a bit easier to make when it comes to advertising regulation. Again, look at the advertising regulations, because they're the ones that have the information about what claims you can make about food in terms of beauty and health. So they're the kind of, that's the resource that you want to be looking at. So we make a lot of beauty claims that are technically, so it's technically like a cosmetic, because we're looking at beauty. We're talking about, you know, did this supplement make your skin feel softer? Did you have a radiant glow? Did your hair feel stronger? That kind of thing. But technically it's obviously a food. So I think if you're thinking about supplements or anything like that, all the claims that I'm going to talk about today are very relevant to that kind of, you know, it's a food, but it's a cosmetic sort of thing. So definitely listen to the rest of the presentation, listen to the case study, and have that with that kind of mind of, can I make this come out my supplement, rather than necessarily kind of an external topical cream or something like that. So that's kind of product categories, sorry. So now I'm going to talk about consumer research, because as I mentioned, this is what we'll be looking at for claims substantiation today. It's actually kind of the best research that you can do when we're looking at wellness, because wellness is about perception, and that's what consumer research is. Consumer research or in-use tests are told are based on the consumer perception of a product. So we're not saying, so for example, if we were looking at maybe a face cream, but it had fragrances in it that meant to make you feel really relaxed, you can't really measure that. You're not looking at a kind of measurement of how relaxed people are. What we're looking for is a perception. Did you feel more relaxed after using this face cream? It's very much what the wellness claims kind of come into. So consumer research is really good for those kinds of claims that are all about perception, but also marketing claims as well. So anything to do with, I would buy this product, I would recommend this product. That's the kind of thing we can get through consumer perception as well. It's not scientific in terms of how it's applied. It's not clinical, it's not instrumental. It's scientific in the way the data is analysed. So it's not sort of, you know, I hate to say it's not scientific, it is, because we're still analysing the data, we're still making sure it's conducted in the correct way, but it's all about the perception. We're not looking at a measurement here. We don't want to measure how relaxed people are. We want to make sure that we get their opinion on it, and indeed substantiate our claims that way. So generally we do in-home tests. So the volunteers are sent the products to test in their own home, and they answer an online questionnaire. This also, as well as reflecting the actual use of the product. So if your consumer was to purchase the product on the shelf, it's exactly how they would use it. So it gives you really valid data in terms of how it will actually be assessed by your market when it goes on, well, by your consumers when it goes into market. But it's also really important for undesirable event reporting as well. So it's part of the Cosmetics Directive in Europe, which means that you have to have actual use of undesirable event data. So not just a patch test. You need to be able to assess if, you know, people use it as they're actually supposed to use it. Do they get any undesirable events? So it's really important for that as well. So generally they're going to be assessing either the product on its own and the efficacy of it, or they'll be assessing as a comparison. So you might have a comparison of products that you want to do. For some claims, you may need additional evidence. So we can always advise for that. If you give me a list of claims, I'll tell you if you need any scientific data there. But as mentioned, for wellness claims, generally it's going to be perception based. So other kinds of reasons to conduct consumer research, we've got substantiating or advertising claims, testing the product efficacy. That doesn't just have to be about substantiating your claims. You may just want to get some feedback at an early development stage and find out if people, if the product's actually working as it's supposed to work. You're ensuring your product is regulatory and legally compliant in your chosen markets, because we can test in the certain markets that you actually want to test your product on the correct demographic of who's going to be purchasing your product. And the data will reflect that. So the advertising standards authorities or regulations, they will see your data and they'll agree that it substantiates those claims in the correct market. So the demographic, you can find out what market suits your product, but you can also key your perfect demographic. So if you knew you were going to sell this product to women between 40 and 60 years old that have fine lines and wrinkles, that's who you're testing your product on. So you can make sure it suits that demographic as well. And geographically, again, you need to make sure that your claims are reflecting the country that they're going to be sold in. So my example for this, I was talking to a client the other day and they asked about a long-lasting claim. They said, if we had a long-lasting claim in the UK, could we use that in our other global markets? And I explained that possibly, potentially, and technically you can absolutely do that. I can't stop you. But what would happen if you had a long-lasting claim in the UK and, for example, your other market was Malaysia, which has got a very humid climate? You might find that long-lasting claim doesn't translate, because where in the UK it's got quite a dry climate, probably a bit cooler, the foundation might stay on their face all day. Yes, great, it's long lasting, I love it. And then Malaysia, no, it felt a bit smudged, it melted a bit on my skin, it transferred onto my clothing. So even though you've got that long lasting claim substantiated, it's now no longer substantiated because the market isn't appropriate. So we can get a kind of I'm trying to think of the word. But basically we can get a representative panel of each territory. So you don't have to test in every single territory you're going to sell your product, but at least we'd have maybe a humid climate and a cooler climate to make sure you can make that claim. You can also to find out the product acceptability and the propensity to buy. So you might find that in the UK, you've got a market and it's the best-selling product, but actually if you tested it in China, they don't really like it as much. You might want to change your marketing a little bit. So it's basically, don't just think about it as I'm using consumer research because I need to substantiate my claims. It's investigating, it's still research, you're still finding out about your product. So I always think, don't have a closed mind with research, keep it really open, have a little look at what your market is, how you can develop your product, because there's a lot you can look at. I've put some examples here of some wellness claims, just to give you kind of examples of how they're what we can substantiate through consumer research. So 88% of people agree that the fragrance is relaxing. 9 out of 10 people would recommend this product as a bedtime essential. 96% of people agree that they look and feel healthier. So we've got a few claims there to give you an idea of what we can kind of substantiate, and they're quite common ones for us when it comes to wellness. Things to be aware of when you're making your claims. So I've already talked about the product categories and the advertising standards authorities, but to make it much more specific, I've just brought up the 6 common criteria from the EU Cosmetics Products Regulation. So again, this is EU, but this is really applicable to every country, because if you have these 6 common criteria in mind, generally your claim's going to be compliant. So legal compliance, so this is to do with, you can't sort of say, it doesn't contain any illegal ingredients, because it can't contain any illegal ingredients. No product on the market does. So you've got to make sure, that basically your legal compliance isn't your claim on your product. Every product must be compliant legally. So don't use that as a claim. It needs to be truthful. So you can't say that it contains vitamin C, for example, if it doesn't contain vitamin C. It's quite straightforward there. Or if it contains such a low amount of vitamin C that it isn't kind of going to have any benefit to the formulation, you've got to make sure you've got enough there. Evidential support, of course, claim substantiation. That's what we're talking about a lot today. I don't need to talk about that too much. Honesty. So you can't kind of use your data and say, okay, we've tested this product on 30 people. 60% of them said they like the product, but I reckon if we tested it on if we doubled our panel, maybe we'd have 70% of them agree. So let's just say that on our packaging. No, it's got to be the exact data that you've actually tested your product on. We've even had this with certain clients as well, where they've tested their product on, say, 60 people, but we've had 55 responses back. And they said, can I say out of 60 people? Well, no, because only 55 of them have actually come back with a full questionnaire. So you need to make sure you're quoting the data as it actually is in its final state. It needs to be fair, so you can't sort of say this is more relaxing. For example, if you had a pillow spray and say one pillow spray had nothing, no ingredients that have been kind of under that aromatherapy umbrella, and then your spray which has got all of that product development in it, which, you know, make sure I've got, know these fragrances are really relaxing, spray both, and the consumer says, okay, there, the one with the lavender fragrance, that's really relaxing, but the other one didn't have that kind of fragrance. It's not fair. So you can't kind of say that comparison. It's generally for comparisons. It's a really good example for fairness. It needs to be exactly the same kind of product. And informed decision making, really straightforward. Make sure that your consumers can make an informed decision when they're purchasing your product. Your claims need to be worded properly. They need to be worded truthfully. It needs to be really clear. You can't kind of make a claim that's kind of open to interpretation. It needs to be really, really obvious for the consumer so they can make a really informed decision about purchasing your product. Types of claims as well, quickly. So the CTPA has done a really helpful breakdown of claims. Again, CTPA UK based, but sorry, that's the Cosmetics, Toiletries and Perfumery Association, if anyone doesn't know. Really helpful resource. If you are in the cosmetics industry, I would recommend being a member if you're not already. They put up an incredible amount of information about claims and regulations. Even if you're not part of the EU or the UK, I still think they're an incredibly helpful resource, because in terms of how, you know, this breakdown of claims, for example, this is applicable anywhere. So it doesn't really matter that they're UK based. So sensory and product aesthetic claims, that's anything to do with the look and feel of the product, the fragrance of it, the packaging, anything like that. Again, all substantiated through consumer research. Performance claims, the efficacy claims, does it work? Does it moisturize the skin? Does it make the participants feel calm? Does it make them feel connected with their inner selves? Those kinds of wellness claims. Ingredient, does a product contain the ingredients? So obviously it just, you know, as I said, vitamin C earlier, that's an ingredient claim, contains vitamin C, which does blah, blah, blah. So that's an ingredient claim for you. Combination claims. So you see this really often with things like a day and night cream, or a cleanser and a toner, or a shampoo and conditioner. This product works best when used with the other product. So you need to test the products together to be able to substantiate that claim. You can do that through consumer research, because we can do a comparison and say, you know, what was the better results, just of the product used on its own, or just the products used together, or the products both used together. Comparison claims, this product is better than this competitor, this product is better than the leading brand. Or it could be a formulation, it's a new and improved formula. You always need to compare those products again and check there's a statistical significant difference between the products from the report. And again, we can conduct that. Subjective claims, that's your consumer perception, or that's all of those things. I would buy this product, this is a must-have, I would recommend this product. Well, they're all subjective. People, you know, you can't measure that with science. So that's the perception claims. And the objective claims, the science, the instrumental studies. This product removes bad odors up to 48 hours. Well, consumers can't say that exact measurement. That's just not fair. So you have to measure that through some kind of instrumental study. So where do we see these claims? So I've talked about the kinds of claims you can make, how you can substantiate them, but where would you see your consumer research claims if you were to produce a product? So I've got some really good wellness brands here, and I've taken this straight from their websites. They've all got some consumer research data behind them. So Beauty Pie have got their super healthy skin serum, and that's got 95% of people agree their skin looked healthier after 4 weeks of use, and 91% agree their skin looked radiant. These look great on your website. If you're looking at selling more products, people are going to purchase it if they see these kinds of claims. Again, we've got one from Elemis there for their sort of skin gel, the superfood skin gel. So some lovely kinds of things like the skin was instantly calm and soothed. They're real wellness claims. And this works with their pillow spray. People feel like they've had a less disturbed sleep. People feel like they had a deeper night's sleep. And you can tell their perception because it's about felt. That's how you can kind of tell about the perception claims. People feel like they had a better night's sleep. It's not a science. It's, do you feel more rested? That's what wellness is about. It's about how you feel. So they're all perception claims. Again, social media. So you can use your claims on your social media. Got example of Neon there. So they've got 82% felt that their Great Day Glow skincare left their skin looking radiant, and 91% felt the skin was nourished. And Temple Spa, 71% said the aroma of the face cream improves the quality of sleep. So it's a really good examples of how you can use that consumer research data also on your social media. So that's Facebook and Instagram there. Also shopping channels. So QVC is kind of my best example of a shopping channel because it's the most popular one still. And it's really important to note that all shopping channel scripts must be substantiated. So all of that amazing text they're talking about when they've kind of got a half-hour stint of selling a product, they can't make it up. It's got to be substantiated. And there's a bit of a guidance there as well about the kind of information that they need if you want to apply to be on QVC. This is kind of information you need. Now, what I want to do is just show you a little clip of how they display the data, the results, when they're talking about it on TV, because they tend to do that as well. So bear with me while I do the old screen share. It's always funny. Trying to work this out. That should be sharing the screen, I believe. Yes, it's got green around it, so I hope it is. I was going to show you this really quick clip of how these results are displayed on QVC.
I know that we did a study, and I would love to share some of the graphics, consumer graphics with you. So just after 1 week, this is measured by an expert grader. This wasn't like we asked the participants. 100% of every single person that used this saw an improvement in smoothness. After 4 weeks, every single person saw an improvement in radiance. We also had people saying there was improvement in skin tone. And now when you keep using it, we get to 8 weeks, we see 95% improvement in appearance of fine lines, 12 weeks, 95% improvement in appearance of pores. Big. So this is just from the serum. That's big. That's that vitamin C you're getting. It's made up of also 10% of fruit.
I won't show you too much more of that one, but as you can see, that's how they're able to display the claims when on QVC. So it's really, really helpful for the people purchasing the product to see that kind of information there as well. Claims on labels and packaging. So obviously I'm talking about how you can use the claims for your marketing, also in a compliance thing. Let's bring it back to those SROs. So ICAS have released the news on their website to say that in principle, labels weren't technically sort of seen as an advert because it's just kind of information about the product. But very much over the last few years, well, for a long time actually, obviously claims go on the labels and the packaging because, you know, if you're looking at a consumer that's just gone into a shop and they're comparing two serums, which one are they going to choose? The one with the more claims on it or the one that doesn't really say anything about the product, without relying on just kind of the brand marketing that's already been put out there. So it's really important to note that your claims can go on your packaging, but they still have to apply by the code of conduct of the advertising authorities. So it's just a bit of information there to be aware of. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, if you're not putting an advert on your website or on your Instagram or something like that, anything that goes in your labels and packaging also needs to be substantiated. So now I want to take you through a quick case study. So this is a wellness product. There's a lot to choose from. Like I said, the wellness claims can be put into any product. Very often things like supplements, but also very often things like face creams. And as this is about cosmetics, I really wanted to bring up a face cream which has got wellness claims attached to it. So this was conducted for one of our clients, which is a luxurious, results-driven skincare and spa brand. So it's called the aromatherapy face cream. So that's what we've called it on the study. So obviously aromatherapy, you can already tell that it's going to be very much on that kind of spa and wellness front before we've kind of even looked at the claims of the product. So it's going to be sold in the EU, so we needed to make sure the advertising claims were substantiated in these territories. But in particular, we're looking at the efficacy claims which support the brand's spa and wellness product range. The claims are focused around the product being calming and relaxing, as well as the cosmetic effects of improving skin appearance and feel. So it's really important. We want to get those wellness claims, but we also want to prove it's a good cosmetic. We want to make sure it's got the efficacy there. So just to bring the legislation back into it and give you a bit of context, because I've talked about who the SROs are. So I wanted to bring up the European Advertising Standards Alliance and what is in their code of conduct. I've talked about it a lot. What is the code of conduct? What's actually in there? So this is part from the ASA's code of conduct, which relates to having claim assessment. So obviously people need to be able to bring their evidence to the EASA without delay should there be a complaint about your product. So the important thing is without delay there. You can't retrospectively test your products. It sometimes happens, I'm not saying it doesn't, because you can have products on the market and then maybe realize, okay, my claims aren't substantiated, let's do that. But obviously if it's too late, if the product's already been complained about, you're not gonna have enough time to substantiate your claims, especially when we have things like skincare claims. Generally we're looking at like a 4-week test to make sure the product actually works, so there's going to be a delay of at least 4 weeks there if you needed to get your evidence. So really important to be aware of and make sure you've got your claims substantiated before your products go on the market. So what was the study protocol? It's the UK. We were happy that the claims could be substantiated in the UK and they'd be applicable to all of the EU market. So all of that investigation I was talking about earlier about the code of conduct of the advertising authorities, but also the efficacy and the performance of the product in the right climate. This one we were really confident that we could do it in the UK. As our client was UK based, it made the whole process much quicker. So it's a single placement study, so we're just investigating one product. 28-day study, as I mentioned, that's quite common for skincare products because you want to make sure that the product actually performs over those 4 weeks. It's quite unlikely in a skincare product you're going to see immediate results, or if you do, you might have immediate results and ongoing results. Whereas things for like color cosmetics, they might be a much shorter test. We had 50% male and female because the product's going to be marketed to both male and female, so we wanted to make sure we had 50% of both. The age range is 25 to 55 because again that's their target age range to advertise the product to. It was an even split of all skin types, so if you want to get the all skin type claims suitable for all skin types, you need to make sure you've got an even split of all the skin types and enough people of each skin type on your study to give you that robust data to say securely, yes, this is going to be suitable for all skin types. And that included sensitive skin as well. It doesn't always, but for this test we did want to do that. They'd be regular users of face creams. Again, they had people that actually liked using the product. You don't want to test a face cream on someone that's never used one before, because the chances are if they're introducing a new product to their skincare regime, they're not going to get the best results. You want to make sure people are already using that kind of product. And it needs to be national if marketing data is to be reliable. So it just means that we made sure we recruited people across the whole of the UK and didn't have it focused to one sort of area, because we want, the product's going to be available all over the UK. So you want to make sure you've got people that represent that. So what were the claims? What did we get out of it? So I've lifted this straight out of our report. There's just a few questions I've selected. I obviously haven't given you the entire report for the study. So when you get a report from Ayton Global Research, all of this analysis is built into our system. You haven't got to wait for a final report. So you get a login for the client portal, we call it. And as soon as people have started answering the questionnaire, you can start viewing the report and seeing the results. So all you have to wait for at the end of the study is for us to get the responses in. And as soon as they're in, you can download that report straight away. No need for further statistical analysis, particularly with claim substantiation. And that's because you get this table included, which is exactly what you need for your claims. So you can see you've got your questions on the left-hand side. We've got the number of people that said they had a satisfied response to the question, the number of people that had a neutral response, the number of people that were not satisfied, the percentage of people that were satisfied, neutral and not satisfied. So the percentage of people that were satisfied is what we're looking for when we're looking for claims testing. This is what gets lifted straight into those examples that I showed you earlier that are on people's social media and their websites and everything like that. You would have 90% of people agreed that the aroma of the face cream is soothing. Excellent claim, straight into marketing, perfect. Also means you can check your pass rate. So all of these that have got a little asterisk by them, which you can see is all of them, are the claims that have passed the internal pass mark. So generally that's about 66% for a statistical majority, but most people set it at 70% because there are some advertising platforms, for example, television, that don't accept claims lower than 70% to be put on their advertising platform. So generally it's about 70%. So so let's just go through the claims that we achieved that I've picked out for this study. So the aroma of the face cream is soothing. That's a really wellness kind of claim. The face cream makes me feel relaxed. The aroma of the face cream improves the quality of my sleep. The face cream leaves my skin feeling comforted. These are excellent examples of wellness claims and how you can use those in cosmetics. Quickly, before we go to question and answer, I really want to talk about examples of removed adverts. So this is where I was talking about earlier. So the first one I want to talk about is the Maybelline is sued. So that's when I was saying that the FTC are a federal organization. They can build up cases and actually sue companies that have got misleading adverts. So that's why I was saying be really, really cautious in the US because it's a bit different in terms of what is federal. Acne, I talked about that earlier. So acne is a medicinal claim, and Clearasil got on hot water because they were making what was a medicinal claim. Now they were really bad. They had evidence about this, by the way. They had evidence to substantiate their claim. It was just that the product was a cosmetic and not a medicine. So this is why I was saying you need to be really, really cautious because they did everything right. They just didn't market it correctly in terms of what the product category was. And also a couple of articles that came up about Pantene, which had misleading adverts about hair being stronger, and again did not have it backed up by the correct evidence needed. So the main thing, the reason I bring these up is, as you can see, they're all from newspapers. So the worst thing about having misleading adverts or having no evidence to substantiate your claims is you get bad press. So it's not that these companies are necessarily trying to do anything wrong. They might have just made a mistake. But the problem is that if you don't take your due diligence, if you don't get that evidence, if you don't check if your product claims are correct, you can get this bad press as well. So you really want to avoid that for your brand. So just a bit more information about Ayton Global Research. So I've talked about everything you'll need to know in terms of the evidence that you need, how you can substantiate it. But why should you choose Ayton Global Research to conduct your consumer research for you? So we're an award-winning research company. We've won awards for international business, for family business, we've won internship awards. We're GDPR compliant, of course, we're an EU brand, but we also have an ISO 27001, which is an audit on our GDPR compliance. And we've got our own DPA, our own data protection officer. Data protection is hugely important if you're a research company. We've got over 600,000 volunteers in our database globally. We need to make sure we're protecting their identity, anonymizing their data, and we also need to make sure we're protecting the information you give us. We've got undesirable event reporting, which is conducted in real time, the same as our reports. So you can log in at any time and see if any undesirable events have been reported. That's all done in conjunction with the Cosmetic Vigilance Act. And we've got product liability insurance to protect you as well as ourselves if anyone does have a serious undesirable event, although it's very unlikely, so don't panic. We've got an ISO 9001, which is to do with quality assurance. So we have an audit on our quality assurance, on our quality management. We're a partner to the Market Research Society. So again, we follow their code of conduct. Basically gives you security to know that the research has been done with great quality. So we attend training on things like study design and questionnaire design, as well as done ethically. It's a really important part of Market Research Society to make sure that all of the research is conducted ethically. We can provide regulatory advice. As I said, that is my job. If you ever need any kind of assistance for regulatory advice, you could let me know. And you get your own designated study manager who will know your brand inside and out. That's how I started the company. I had a list of clients that I was the kind of go-to person to know everything about how they conduct research, how they market their products, what they use their data for, to make sure the research is all conducted for best practice for that company and that client. Further advice for consumer studies. So just quickly before the question and answers here, we always suggest a panel size starting at 100 responses. It does depend on the claim and it does depend on the product. So always find out a bit more information from us if you're not sure, but it's just a good guideline because people sometimes just don't know where to start. You know, how many products am I going to have to test to get this claim? Think about 100 responses and go from there. Again, we've got product liability insurance, but you must inform your product liability insurance provider that you're using an external supplier for consumer studies. The samples must have been safety tested, so they need to be safety tested to the point that they can be released on the market. Again, that varies for each kind of product. Your samples must be debranded. If you're doing claim substantiation, you can't have a bias towards your brand. And you need to ensure that your questionnaire design supports your claims, so we can help with that as well. So now I'm going to go on to the question and answer section. So I'm sorry, I know that's a lot of information. I do tend to pile these up, but I hope that's been really helpful. And please feel free to click on the Q&A button and ask any questions you may have. There is one question in the chat just about the slides. Absolutely, this product's being recorded. The presentation's being recorded. So I'll be sending the link to the recording straight after the presentation today. So you'll receive that soon. Oh, sorry, I'll leave that question and answer open a little bit longer. So I haven't got any questions coming in yet, but please do feel free to fire away. Again, no pressure. If you want to go away and have a little think, please, you can just email me afterwards as well. So I'll leave that open for a few minutes longer, a few seconds longer. So I can't see any questions coming in. I don't want to hold everyone up too much, but as mentioned, I'll be emailing later today, and you can reply to that with any questions you might have. So just to finish off, I want to talk about the Society of Cosmetic Scientists. So we're part of the committee now. Our managing director has joined the Council for Wales and West for the SCS. And they've got a SES diploma, which is the distance learning course, and that is a recognised course in the essentials of cosmetic science. You can do that from anywhere in the world, so please feel free to have a look at their website if you are interested in doing another course in cosmetic science. And the IFSCC Congress is going to be taking place in London on the 19th to the 22nd of September 2022, and you can register your interest at the website there now. So thank you so much for listening today. I do hope that I've kind of answered any questions that you might have had before the presentation, but if there's any that you've still clung on to and kind of, oh, that didn't really cover that, feel free to email me as well. I've put my contact information there. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll be sending the recording shortly. Thank you.